this morning. Parents in England who are eligible for additional government-funded childcare hours from September have been urged to apply before Sunday's deadline. At the moment in England, all 3- and 4-year-olds are eligible for 15 hours of funded childcare, regardless of their parents' working status. The changes mean that from September, working parents in England will be entitled to 30 hours of funded childcare for children aged between 9 months and 4 years. But to qualify for the hours, the majority of parents will have to earn more than £9,518, but less than £100,000 a year. Those on certain benefits will also be entitled to 15 hours of free childcare for 2-year-olds.
So hundreds of thousands of parents will benefit from this investment that government's making. We recognise that actually a parent's background often determines where a child ends up in life, and investing in early education can make a huge difference to improve outcomes for children later in life. So we've been working really hard over the past year. We inherited a pledge without a plan, and we want to make sure that parents can access this fantastic support from government.
We're joined now by Leitch, who's the Chief Executive of the Early Years Alliance, and also here with us on the sofa, Deborah Thompson, owner of the TikTots. That's not easy to say. Nursery Group. Welcome. Good morning to you both. Deborah, just give me your view in terms of this is now coming in, the deadline's coming up. Where are you at?
So, first thing to say is it's a really positive thing. So when we're talking about children being ready for school, then if we get our hands on those children earlier, then we can teach them good communication skills, do all the toilet training, all of those things around dummies and, you know, getting rid of that, and children being actually school ready is really positive. So we are ready as a nursery group. We feel that we're ready. We've got loads of children starting next week, which we're really positive about. From our point of view, it would be nicer if there was a steadier flow of children, because we get an influx of children 3 times a year, which is hard for them to then everybody settling at once. So if the children have turned 9 months in May, they're still starting next week. So that could be smoothed out and made easier as far as everybody coming in. But we are ready to go. So we've trained up staff and got ourselves organised.
And one of the things we asked the Minister was whether or not if everyone who wanted to applied for this childcare, would they all have it? And would it all be paid for and affordable and be able to be run by nurseries like yourselves, say, in a year? He said yes.
Yeah, so it is a challenge. So it is a challenge because obviously we've got to get places ready, we've got to get staff ready, we've got to budget for having all those children coming in. So in terms of being aware of what the costs are going to be, understanding the costs, I'm still waiting from my local authority, which is Lancashire County Council, to have my lease agreed. So I don't know what my rent's going to be. Obviously, we had a big change in costs of staff earlier this year. So in terms of national insurance, you know, minimum wage. So all of those things have impacted on our budgeting and our ability to plan for how many staff we can have. And it's hard to know necessarily, because obviously the deadline's only just coming up now, how many children are definitely going to come. So we've got lots of children booked in, but next week we'll also get phone calls from parents saying, "Hi, I'm ready, can we go?" And that's a bit spontaneous, where people, or we might get phone calls in, say, October, where people say, "My child's 9 months old now, let's go." And they're kind of thinking, right, is there a place for me? So one piece of advice would be to parents to get ahead of the curve. Like you've already mentioned, apply for your code, but then also get in touch with the nursery you want to attend and make sure there is actually a place there.
Leitch from the Early Years Alliance. Do you just want to reflect for us those thoughts from the Early Years Minister who spoke to us a little earlier on? Absolute confidence. There'll be staff and there'll be places. What do you say to that?
Well, I also thought it was interesting that the Minister said that this was a childcare pledge without a plan. And I have to say, when you talk to many providers, they still think that's the case. I mean, here we have the biggest initiative ever launched in terms of early years care and education. And we have a recruitment and retention crisis. We have gross underfunding, particularly for 3- and 4-year-olds. And there's no dispute about that. Even the previous government had to accept that they were underfunding by around 30%. So when I talk to providers, they still think this is a crisis. And then to make things worse, the Treasury decides that they will dump upon us an additional cost in terms of national insurance increases, and we are prohibited from passing on those costs despite the fact that they have not factored that amount into the new rates. So we're not surprised actually that many of our providers are telling us prices will go up, and prices for extras basically will go up, and particularly for those parents who do not qualify for these entitlements. So that doesn't sound fantastically rosy to me, that's for sure.
Well, given what you've just said, and listening carefully to what you said, it seems in stark contrast to what the government minister has told us this morning, that he had an absolute confidence this is going to work. There will be places and there will be staff. You are painting a very different picture.
Well, providers, no doubt, will do their absolute utmost to try and facilitate, basically, parents' needs. But if we're talking medium, long-term sustainability, I'm afraid there is nothing to tell me that the plan exists that will change that unless we get adequacy of funding. We ourselves represent 14,000 nurseries, preschools and childminders across the country. We're also an operator of around now 27 nurseries exclusively in areas of deprivation. We're not for profit, so we don't have to account to shareholders or private equity. If it breaks even, it's about as good as it gets. This time 6 years ago, we operated 132. Now we're down to 27. The national insurance increases added £1.2 million to our wage bill. That doesn't feel like it's a supportive move towards a sector. And that's what most providers are feeling at this particular point in time. So rhetoric is one thing, reality, of course, is something completely different.
OK, Deborah, do you want to pick up on some of the thoughts?
Yes.
Because just in terms of the practicalities and the parents you're dealing with and the questions they're asking.
Yeah, so just a couple of points. First of all, on the funding. So we are currently with Lancashire County Council, which has recently been now taken over by reform, and one of their cost-cutting ideas was to reduce our funding rate. So the funding has gone up slightly. It's on the right trajectory, but it doesn't yet cover the cost. So what Neil's saying there about breaking even, that is where we're at in terms of our funding for our nurseries. So we don't know what our our funding rate will be, but we've been given a kind of a heads up that it might go down when really it doesn't yet cover the costs of what we would want to be.
And just in terms of parents and how they're trying to navigate this process,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, it's not straightforward.
It's not straightforward. It's complicated for parents. So quite often people ring me and say, I'm not really sure what I'm meant to do. When do I get my code? How do I get my code? So we give a lot of guidance about that, obviously, when we get the chance to speak to parents. But first of all, they're out in the big wide world trying to figure out what to do. And if you're a parent of a child who was born on the 31st of March, you can get your funding from the 1st of April. If your child is born on the 1st of April, you can't get your funding until the 1st of September. So there's a long time to wait, and that seems, kind of confusing to parents because they would ring us up in May and say, my child's 9 months, let's go. Well, I'm sorry, we can't quite get you, you can come in September. So that is hard for them to understand because they would then say, well, why can I not have my childcare now? So there's that side of it. And then the whole thing about it's free, it's not free. So a lot of parents kind of come along and say, oh, I'm getting this free childcare. Well, it's funded and it's funded by taxpayers. So there's a lot behind it that parents don't really understand. I noticed this morning
But they don't pick up the shortfall,
the nuances,
do they?
no.
No, they don't pick up the shortfall, do they?
The parents, no. So the business, we do, and the business model has changed hugely over the. I've been in trading in nurseries for about 18 years, and at one point, like Neil was just describing there, I could adjust my costs and adjust my prices to, make sure that I am covering all my costs. Now I'm running at a very tight cost kind of structure already, and then the funding rate is being applied to me, and most of our parents are now kind of using mainly the funded hours, so I'm only able to use the funded income rather than necessarily top it up with anything else.
Neil, just regarding the rate, I'm trying to get my head around this because Deborah says you're breaking even at the moment, but there are nurseries which are having to make up the hourly rate because the funding doesn't match, say, minimum wage, for example. How does this work? How is the rate decided? And if there are issues like this, who mediates them? Who mitigates them?
I wish I could answer your question, who sets the rate, because it doesn't seem to have any material base whatsoever. Just a little point, and this sounds like it goes back a while, but you'll see its relevance. In December of 2018, when we were tired of the then government telling us there's enough money in the system, we said, if you think there's enough money in the system, show us your computations. They told us to go away, so we filed a Freedom of Information request. It took us 2.5 years to get that information, and only when the Information Commissioner's Office ruled in our favour. And what did it say on this heavily redacted document they gave us? They actually said this, that to adequately fund the system, by 2021, we would have to pay a rate, an hourly rate for a 3- and 4-year-old of £7.49. In 2025, after double-digit inflation and the chaotic, dare I say, Liz Truss budget, we get on average for a 3- and 4-year-old about £5.50. Of their own admission, we are short-funded and we're expected to make up the difference. Now, as Deborah says, before you could do that by cross-subsidising from other parents and charging for extras, by September of this year, 80% of all hours delivered will be government funded. That makes it absolutely critical that there is adequacy of funding. And my suggestion would be it needs to be removed from government, it needs to be removed from the Department for Education, have an independent body set that rate, not the sector, an independent body, and therefore, if it's an equitable rate, providers will survive. We will not have seen the decline in both childminders and group settings that we've seen over the last decade. Pay a fair rate, people will stay in this sector, parents will get the deal that basically they were told they would get under previous and this government.
Neil Leitch, thank you for your time this morning. Neil Leitch is from the Early Years Alliance. Deborah Thompson, thank you as well. So,
welcome.
When's next week?
So next week the term begins.
Yeah.
So yeah,
good
and
luck.
then thank
good
you
luck.
so
and
much.
Of course,
it's going to be busy.
Important that deadline is coming up on Sunday, so
Yeah.
that's an important marker for everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
It is time to find out what's happening wherever you are. We'll be back very shortly.